Hello all, welcome back. It's me again, on a Friday, doing a film review. Guess you could say it's a film review Friday, hey, If you haven't already watched it, just a quick one, go check out my crude review I did on Tuesday, because I think you probably will enjoy it. I would say it's one of my best reviews I've done so far, but I'll leave that up for you guys to decide. Today, I had a choice of what I was going to do. I originally was going to do Toy Story because I thought it was a bit of a fun-filled one, nice and simple, but no. I'm going out drinking in a bit, so I figured what better way to segue into a film review than doing a film about 5 gentlemen that go on a pub crawl and things start going a bit haywire. Today we're talking about the third film in the Cornetto trilogy, and that is, of course, The World's End. For reference, just to get a bit of backstory in for you, the Cornetto trilogy is a trilogy of 3 films, starting with Shaun of the Dead, then going to Hot Fuzz, and then finally ending at The World's End. They're all directed by Edgar Wright, and they all star Nick Frost and Simon Pegg as the 2 main lead characters in each of the films. The World's End, again, on face value, on first glance, you probably won't enjoy it as much as Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz, especially if you've watched those 2 first. You probably will think that it's a bit lackluster compared to the first 2. However, I would say this film has aged like fine wine, and that is because as the more times you rewatch it, you realise how funny this film actually is, how well paced this film is, how well directed and acted this film actually is, and essentially how funny this film actually is, because I think it is arguably the funniest film out of the 3. Maybe not the most quotable, maybe not the most rememberable out of the 3, but certainly I would say it is the funniest one out of the 3 of them. There's so many laugh out loud moments in this that, especially on first glance, you might not find as funny, but on rewatch especially, you will find them quite funny. I have laughed many a time watching this film because there are bits in it that just make me laugh. I'll give you a rundown essentially of the plot without getting into too many spoilers, just in case you haven't seen it and you want to watch it. The rundown is essentially there is a man called Gary King who wants to go back to his old hometown with his 4 best friends from school to finish off the pub crawl they started back in 1987. Originally the 4 friends are all reluctant, but somehow he convinces them all to come with him, and they head down to Newton Haven, which is the town where they go to do the pub crawl called the Golden Mile. It starts with, it's a chain of like 13 pubs that starts with one and ends at The World's End, which is the name of the film. It's also the name of the pub at the final pub at the end of the Golden Mile. However, when they get to the town, they suddenly begin to realise that things exactly aren't as they left them. Things are quite weird, they're quite strange, and they don't originally know what it is until a certain bit happens in the film where it's suddenly all revealed as to what is actually going on. They then essentially have to sort of keep up this ruse of them being on this pub crawl in order to try and survive and make it out of Newton Haven alive. That is essentially the premise of The World's End without actually spoiling a single thing about what happens in the main plot of the film. The film has a few slow moments in it, and it's got a few bits that don't really make sense, but then again, I think that adds a bit of beauty to the film because it's about 5 men on a pub crawl that are getting drunk, where a lot of what they're seeing and doing isn't really going to make much sense because they're inebriated to hell and high water and they really don't have a clear jogged memory of what's going on, which I think is quite funny and actually quite clever. If you've seen an Edgar Wright film before, if you've seen a film with Nick Frost and Simon Pegg before, you will instantly know it as an Edgar Wright film because of the way it's paced, the way the camera moves in the film, some of the dialogue in the film, some of the running gags in the film. Case in point, the Cornetto gag itself in this film. It's very clever, I quite like it, and the same with the fence gag in this film. Another clever way they managed to get that gag in all 3 films, and this one would be my favourite one out of the 3, I think. Yeah, there's not really much else I can say other than I quite enjoy it. Again, it gets knocked down a couple marks just because it is, if you're comparing it to Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, it is probably the most lackluster one out of the 3, but that doesn't take away from its film. this film still is a banger movie, and I highly recommend go watching it, especially if you've seen Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. Again, like I say, if you've watched those two films first, you probably won't enjoy it as much as them two to begin with, but give it a couple watches, give it a couple goes in advance, and I think it might come around on you. It certainly did for me. When I first watched The World's End, I thought it was a bit like, that's a bit of a rubbish way to end the Cornetto trilogy, but like I say, as time went on, as I got a bit older, as I started going out on my own pub crawls, I realised that this film actually is very good, and it actually is very funny, considering the premise that it's in, how relatable this film can be at times, and how actually emotional at points it gets as well. I would say it's definitely the most emotional film out of the three as well, with stuff that happens to Gary, stuff that is revealed about Gary in the film as well as stuff that happens to Andy and stuff that's revealed about Andy as well. It's definitely got the most heart, and I think it is, I would say, the funniest film out of the three. In terms of the rating, I'm going to give this film about a 7 out of 10. Mainly, it would have been like an 8.5, but the main reason it gets knocked down a few points is because of those slow moments that I think sort of hinder the film a bit. It feels quite fast-paced in points and then really slow in other points, and it feels like a bit off, but nothing that's going to knock it down too many marks. It's still a very, very good film. That is going to be it though for today, people. I hope you've enjoyed this film review on a Friday, and I hope you enjoy The World's End if you choose to go watch it. But until then, I've been Connor. This has been Film Review Friday on a Friday. I will see you all in the next one. Peace out. Goodbye.